I've always had a fascination with abandoned places. Their eerie silence, the way time seems to stop inside them. There's something strangely peaceful about walking through forgotten halls, letting the past settle around you like dust. So, when I heard about the old Blackwood Hotel on the edge of town, I knew I had to see it for myself. The place had been empty for nearly 30 years, towering over the remains of a long-forgotten strip of businesses. People said it was cursed. Every owner who tried to revive it went bankrupt within a few years. The town had little need for a grand hotel anyway. It was small, tucked away in a corner of the country where few people ever passed through. I wasn't expecting much beyond broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. It was just another place where life had moved on. That's what I told myself as I parked my car a few blocks away and approached the crumbling structure on foot. The facade was worse than I expected. Bricks had begun to crumble, and ivy curled around the once grand entrance, creeping up to the shattered remains of the marquee sign. The front doors had been left ajar, a yawning mouth welcoming me inside. The lobby was frozen in time. A massive chandelier hung overhead, coated in dust, its crystals dull and lifeless. Faded wallpaper peeled away in long strips, revealing bare plaster underneath. A few armchairs still sat near the fireplace, their upholstery torn, stuffing spilling out like exposed bone. I moved deeper inside, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors. A faint breeze whispered through the broken windows, carrying the scent of decay. To my right, a grand staircase curved upward into darkness. But I had no intention of going up just yet. Instead, I wandered toward the front desk. That's when I noticed something odd. A small brass bell sat atop the counter, untouched by dust. Everything else in the hotel was coated in thick layers of it, but the bell gleamed as if someone had polished it just yesterday. I reached out, my fingers hesitating over the cool metal. Something about it made me uneasy. It was just a bell, nothing more, but the pristine surface felt raw. Then, from somewhere deep within the hotel, I heard a sound. A door closing. Not slamming, not creaking, just a quiet, deliberate click. My heart began to beat a little faster. I wasn't alone. I turned my head slowly, scanning a lobby. There was no sign of movement, no shifting shadows. I told myself it was probably the wind, a door swaying in its frame. Nothing to worry about. Still, the weight of the silence pressed down on me, thick and suffocating. I swallowed hard and moved toward the staircase. If someone else was here, I wanted to know who. The second floor was lined with a long hallway, doors stretching in both directions. The air was heavy, musty, and the dim light from the few unbroken windows barely reached the far end of the corridor. I took a few cautious steps, my fingers brushing against the old wallpaper. Some of the doors were ajar, revealing abandoned rooms with beds still made, furniture untouched, but draped in sheets of dust. It was strange, like the guests had simply vanished, leaving their belongings behind. Then I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere below me. I stopped breathing. The sound was too measured, too careful to be an accident. Someone was walking through the lobby, just as I had moments before. I turned, creeping back toward the staircase, careful to avoid the weak floorboards. Peering over the railing, I scanned the lobby below. Nothing, just the empty chairs and the front desk and the bell. still gleaming in the dim light. And then I saw it. The brass bell was gone. A cold chill slid down my spine. I hadn't heard it ring. I hadn't heard anyone take it, but it was no longer on the desk. I needed to leave. Now, as quietly as I could, I started down the stairs, placing each step carefully to avoid making noise. The air felt different, thicker, charged with something unseen. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, just as I reached the bottom step, I heard the whisper. Close. Too close. Right behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't even breathe. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I moved as fast as I dared, stepping onto the marble floor of the lobby. My legs felt heavy, like wading through water, but I kept moving. I reached the front doors, shoved them open, and stepped into the light. The cool air hit me like a wave, snapping me back to reality. I turned around, expecting to see someone, but the lobby was empty. The brass bell was back on the counter, exactly where it had been before. I didn't wait to figure out what it meant. I walked away quickly, not daring to look back until I reached my car. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. Looking back, I can't explain what happened in that hotel. Maybe someone had been there with me, playing some elaborate trick. Maybe my mind had gotten the better of me in the silence. Or maybe the Blackwood Hotel wasn't as abandoned as everyone. There was a house just outside of town, tucked away in the woods like a forgotten relic. It had been empty for as long as anyone could remember. Some people said a family used to live there, but nobody knew for sure. It was the kind of place that didn't invite questions, just quiet avoidance. But places like that always piqued my curiosity. It was a late afternoon when I decided to check it out. The sun hung low in the sky, spilling orange light through the trees as I made my way down the overgrown path. The driveway was nearly gone, swallowed by grass and years of neglect. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. Even the usual sounds of birds and rustling leaves seemed to fade away. When I finally reached the house, it looked even older than I expected. The wood had gone gray with age, the porch sagging like it was exhausted from holding itself up for so long. I stepped onto it carefully, listening to the groan of the planks beneath my feet. One of the front windows was shattered, leaving jagged edges of glass clinging to the frame. I hesitated before going in. Normally, I would have brought a friend for something like this, but I hadn't thought it would be anything more than a quiet, forgotten house. Now, standing in front of it, I wasn't so sure. Still, I had come all this way. I pushed the front door open, surprised to find it wasn't locked. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of wood left to rot. The living room still had furniture, an old couch, a coffee table covered in magazines so faded I couldn't make out the covers. Picture frames littered the floor, their glass cracked, the images inside water-damaged and curling at the edges. I moved carefully through the first floor, stepping over debris, letting my flashlight cut through the dimness. There was something eerie about a place left behind like this, frozen in time but still slowly decaying. I could almost feel the presence of the past lingering in the air. The stairs leading to the second floor creaked under my weight. Each step felt like it might give way, but they held. At the top, there was a narrow hallway with two doors, one slightly open, the other shut tight. I checked the open door first. The room inside was empty. No furniture, no forgotten belongings, just dust swirling in the beam of my flashlight. It felt out of place compared to the clutter downstairs. Then, from somewhere below, a sound. A soft but distinct thud. My pulse quickened. It wasn't the sound of the house settling, it was deliberate. I turned off my flashlight and stood still, listening. Silence. But I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I moved carefully back toward the stairs, trying not to make a sound. The house had been empty for decades, no reason for anyone to be here. unless they didn't want to be found. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, my breath caught in my throat. The front door, which I had left wide open, was now closed. I walked up to it, keeping my steps light. I reached for the handle and pulled. It didn't budge. I pulled harder. Nothing. It was locked. From the outside, my chest tightened. Someone had been here, was still here. I turned, scanning the room. No movement, no sound, just the heavy stillness pressing in on me. I backed toward the broken window, my hands shaking as I braced myself against the sill. The drop wasn't high. I could make it. Then, just as I was about to climb through, something shifted in the shadows of the hallway. A shape. I didn't wait to see who or what it was. I jumped. The impact sent a sharp pain through my ankle, but I didn't stop moving. I sprinted through the trees, keeping my flashlight off, weaving between trunks and low-hanging branches. I didn't turn around. Then, just ahead, lights. Red and blue flickering through the trees. Police. 2 squad cars were pushing through the overgrown driveway, heading straight for the house. I ducked behind a tree, watching as the officers rushed toward the front door. They weren't here for me. I stayed hidden, waiting, watching. They disappeared inside, but I didn't stick around to find out what happened next. I made my way back home, heart still hammering. In the following days, I searched for any news about what had happened that night. Nothing. No reports, no explanations. Just silence. I don't know who or what was in that house with me. I don't know why the police showed up at that exact moment. But I do know one thing. I was never supposed to be there.